Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Village Board meeting to order on Tuesday, September 4, 2018, and ask you if you would please rise and join the Village Board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Glasgow. Trustee LaBedz.
Here.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Here.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Here.
Trustee Scaletta. Trustee Sidor.
Here.
Trustee Blackwood. Trustee Baldino.
Here.
President Hayes.
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and the first item to approve is the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting from August 20, 2018. Are there any changes or passes?
Pass.
Passed by Trustee Tinaglia.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by Trustee Rosenberg, second by Trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next are the minutes from the Village Board meeting from that same evening. Same pass for Trustee Tinaglia. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval. Second.
Motion to approve by Trustee Baldino, seconded by Trustee Rosenberg. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And finally, the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting from August 27, 2018. Any changes or passes?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by Trustee Tinaglia, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we move on to the approval of the accounts payable, and I call on Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd move approval of the warrant register with a check date of August 30th, 2018 in the amount of $4,354,601.06.
Second. Motion to approve by Trustee Rosenberg, seconded by Trustee Sidor. Questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Sidor.
Yes.
Trustee Baldino.
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz.
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Yes.
President Hayes.
Yes. Well, next under recognitions and presentations is the reason why most of you are here this evening. We've got a very special recognition here this evening. We have such a great team that helps us provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our community. And one of the very important members of our team is Police Canine Max. And Max is to be congratulated tonight because he is retiring. He is officially retiring from the service to the Village of Arlington Heights after 8 exemplary years. And so I would like to call Officer Mike Butler, his handler, and Max to the front for the official retirement ceremony. Why don't you come over here, Mike? Okay. I do have this official proclamation to read tonight in honor of this very special occasion. This is a Village of Arlington Heights proclamation recognizing Police Canine Max for his dedication and service to the citizens of Arlington Heights as a member of the Arlington Heights Police Department. Whereas for over 100 years, police departments across the United States have utilized canines for their unique talents. And whereas Max, a German Shepherd, was born in Hungary on August 21st, 2008, in September 2010, Max became the 3rd police canine for Arlington Heights Police Department, badge number 254K. And whereas over his 8-year career, Canine Max recovered controlled substances valued at over $3 million, as well as $1 million in cash and criminal assets. And whereas Max has proven to be popular with the public, having demonstrated his abilities in over 400 public presentations. And whereas Max has used his considerable tracking abilities to locate wanted subjects and missing persons, including in the winter of 2014, an elderly Alzheimer's patient who wandered from his care facility in sub-zero temperatures, wearing only his pajamas, was located unharmed and returned to safety. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Thomas W. Hayes, on behalf of the entire Village Board of Trustees, declare September 4, 2018 as the official retirement date of Max. Max, again, is the third police canine to retire from the department, and he has worked exclusively with Officer Mike Butler for those 8 years. The Arlington Heights Village Board, on behalf of its citizens and the Arlington Heights Police Department, thank Max for his dedicated service as a police canine and wish him a long and happy retirement with Officer Butler. Congratulations, Mike. Oh, picture? Let's do we get pictures?
Next one. Come on. Thanks. Benny.
All right, let Karen get one.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right. I'll hold on to this for a second. Okay.
I can speak pretty loudly. Thank you, Mayor Hayes, and thank you to all the members of the board for your kindness in recognizing Max's 8 years of service and his retirement. It's humbling to see the number of people that have come out to celebrate Max's retirement, and I think it's a testament to the goodwill and the positive connection with the community that Max has brought to our department. Max has helped apprehend violent criminals, taking illegal drugs off the street, and helped find lost people and missing children. But he has been more than just a narcotics and patrol dog. He has served as an ambassador to the police department and the village, sometimes just in his getting out of the squad car. Max's beautiful appearance and sweet, calm demeanor allowed us to talk with large and diverse groups of people with whom we might never otherwise have spoken. Whether we were conducting a public demonstration, stopping for lunch, or just walking into the police station, we always took the opportunity to let people interact with Max, ask questions about the police department and the canine program, and let kids pet him and take pictures with him, and also to hand out his baseball cards and stickers. Because of Max, I have met many residents of this village who wholeheartedly support this police department, but have never called 911 and hopefully will never need to. Whatever assignment we have on the Arlington Heights Police Department, we are, first and foremost, public servants. The ability to serve the residents of the village of Arlington Heights has been increased in many ways by Max's 8 years with us. That said, the ability of police officers to provide the highest level of service to our residents rises and falls with the vision, creativity, and proficiency of the police department's leadership. Chief Morning and Deputy Chiefs Pecora, Recker, and Hayes have provided us with the tools we need to do the best job that we can. The establishment of this type of multi-use canine program is a perfect example. I sincerely thank them for the privilege of being able to work as Max's handler for the last 8 years. As for any concerns that you may have about Max's life after his police career, you needn't worry. Max will be resting on his comfortable couch, relaxing in the yard under his shady maple tree, and enjoying the delicious cheeseburgers that he loves so much, in moderation, of course. I will try to repay him for all the midnight shifts he worked, the dangerous situations he was in, and all the times that he bravely and selflessly protected me by making his senior years as wonderful as I can. Thank you.
Congratulations. Do we have some other dogs that are with us this evening, if you want to just introduce them? Have they already left?
It's popular, Mayor.
There are like a dozen.
Oh, we thank them for being here as well. That retirement sounds pretty good. I'm a few years away from it, but I'm kind of envious of Max. I don't know about all of you. All right, thank you all for joining us tonight, all members of our team. Give those members just a minute to exit the room, and then we'll move on in the agenda.
Good idea.
All right, well, next under recognitions and presentations, we have representatives from our award-winning Arlington Heights Memorial Library here this evening, and to present this year's book as part of our One Book, One Village program, we have Mary Hastings, the Director of Communications and Marketing. So Mary, welcome.
Thank you very much. That's a tough act to follow, but I will do my best. Good evening, Mayor Hayes and trustees. I am Mary Hastings, Director of Communications and Marketing at the Arlington Heights Memorial Library. Thank you for having me here tonight to talk about the library's annual One Book, One Village community read. Now in its 5th year, the idea behind One Book, One Village is to build community by inviting all Arlington Heights to read the same book at the same time and talk about it with their friends and their neighbors. This year's book is Every Note Played by Lisa Genova. The book begins with themes of love, life, and the celebrity-level success of Richard Evans, a world-renowned classical concert pianist. To quote from the book, "He is loved by everyone and no one." The antagonists in this story are dysfunctional family relationships and the one that Richard never saw coming, a fatal illness in the form of ALS. Thought-provoking, moving, and masterful, Every Note Played is a powerful exploration of regret, forgiveness, freedom, and what it means to be alive. Playing on throughout is the piano. It is what brings Richard and his wife Karina together. It eventually comes between them. And in the end, it performs a meaningful life finale. Copies of Every Note Played are available for checkout at the library, senior center, on the bookmobile, and as an ebook. We hope that you'll participate in our book discussions, related programs, and attend our author visit featuring Lisa Genova on October 18th, sponsored by our Friends of the Library. In recognition of the musical elements in Every Note Played, the library invites residents to take part in the Piano Project, a public outdoor art display that reinvents pianos and puts them on display throughout the community to be enjoyed and played by all. The pianos, featuring original artwork by 6 local artists, will be located in Harmony Park, Arlington Heights Metro Station, Northwest Community Healthcare Wellness Center, the Senior Center, and 2 at the library. We hope that you'll join us September 13th at 5:30 p.m. in Harmony Park for a ribbon cutting with Mayor Hayes. The artists, piano donors, and our generous business sponsors, Waverly Inn Memory Care, Northwest Community Healthcare, the Moorings of Arlington Heights, Jennifer Burnage State Farm Insurance Agency, Lutheran Home, and our very special civic partner, the Village of Arlington Heights. To learn more about the author, the programs, pianos, and all things One Book, One Village, please visit the library's website. Thank you again for your time, interest, and continued support of the library and our One Book, One Village program. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mary. This is really such a great program for our community, and we can't thank the library enough for all the creative thinking that you guys do over the course of each and every year. And this has been such a great program over a number of years now, and really just another way of getting our community to think as one and to act as one. And it's been just such a great effort. So we really thank all those involved at the library, including most of the board, I think, that's with us tonight, and a number of other staff members. So we thank you all for being here, for supporting this effort, but especially for all you do on a daily basis and throughout each year to enhance the quality of life in Arlington Heights. So thank you very much. We're really looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Right, we move on, and in the agenda, there being no other recognitions and presentations, to citizens to be heard. And we do have a number of blue cards tonight. My understanding is that there will be some discussion regarding the minimum wage issue tonight, and I just wanted to caution those who are speaking tonight that it is not my intention, at least as the mayor of this village, to reopen this discussion I think the Village of Arlington Heights went above and beyond in terms of our discussion last year on the minimum wage issue. More than many other communities that decided to opt out of the Cook County ordinances, the Village of Arlington Heights discussed this issue in depth with much resident input, and from those outside of this village as well. And so I think we've discussed this issue. I don't see that there's anything new that I would consider that would change my vote or that would cause us to reconsider our prior vote. I know that there is a referendum that will be on the local ballots in November as a result of some actions taken by the Cook County Board of Commissioners in terms of individual feelings on the opt-out provisions. And so at this point, I don't see anything that would cause us to reopen discussions on this or reconsider our prior vote. But we do have some blue cards on individuals who wish to address the board on these issues, and so that is your right. And so you are reminded of the 3-minute time limit for all those who might speak under citizens to be heard. And so the first individual to speak is Melissa Lee Lidowitz.
Hello to the board and to all citizens present. My name is Melissa. I've worked at minimum wage of $8.25 right out of college, as did most of my friends here in the North Shore. It is with our voices, the voices of the community's children, that I come to you today. When we craft labor rights craft labor rights referendums, we often overlook the impact being made on the psyche of our youth. Minimum wage communicates to working high schoolers and recent graduates what dollar value their sweat and stresses are worth. Children watch single parents work 2 jobs at once, seldom able to come home, and even less seldom able to rest. They learn that that is the sacrifice of parenthood. They internalize what it means to be an adult, to enter the working world. At my first minimum wage job, I worked with primarily high schoolers, recent graduates, as well as several military veterans. What struck me most about my younger coworkers was their complete acceptance of the strenuous physical work, inconsistent hours, and high-paced yet meticulous demands thrust upon them for that wage. They have been taught they deserve that. That's minimum wage for you. I am 25 years old, and I have never taken a sick day in my life because I have not had the opportunity to. One 16-year-old boy at my old job came to work dizzy, having just vomited before his shift started, and laughing that he'd have to make it until his lunch break before he would be able to vomit again. A college-age coworker of mine, she took the train to work every day and came to work the day after she sprained her wrist because she was not able to take a sick day for that. That's minimum wage work for you, is what they said. When you prioritize the interests of businesses over those of the children who will soon be employed by those businesses in our community, those children are watching. They learn to endure working while sick, to average 50 hours of work a week, which is what me and all of my friends work, and to pray for decent tip rates to inform them on how much they can spend on groceries every week. That is the reality of our children's future, and we, your children, are living it now. Everyone wants to envision a better world for their kids than the one they grew up in. Let's teach our children what kind of working world they deserve. We implore you to reconsider opting out of the Cook County minimum wage ordinance, and if not that, the Cook County sick leave ordinance, for our sake. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Melissa. Next is Jerry Wasserman.
Thank you, President Hayes. In response to what you did just bring up, number one, I think there is a great deal of public support, which I'll be getting into in some details later, for an increase in minimum wage. And I think you'll find as time goes on, more and more studies are being done that show the benefits to the residents and employers of local communities. I know Wilmette just recently reversed their prior action to opt out and recently opted in, and they did a very extensive study. I hear it's a 1,000-page report. I just found this out, so I don't have the details with me right now, that really delved into the statistics of how it's benefiting, improving the quality of life of residents, and how employers are doing well also, and local businesses. I don't have that with me tonight. I'm going to read it soon, and I'll talk about that more at a different time. But obviously, I'm here tonight to encourage the board to reintroduce the Cook County minimum wage ordinance and to opt in, reversing your previous decision last year to opt out. I encourage Arlington Heights to follow suit with communities such as Wilmette and Willow Springs, who recently reversed their prior actions to opt out. You voted to opt out even with strong local support for an increase in minimum wage in recent non-binding referendums. 65% of Arlington Heights voters supported a higher state minimum wage, and 75% favored paid sick days. There's strong bipartisan support for increasing the minimum wage, as 74% of Americans are in favor of it. Families are finding it difficult to make ends meet on the current Illinois minimum wage of $8.25. In a Daily Herald article at the time, those of you who voted to not opt out of the ordinance were quoted as saying you were listening to the will of the constituents who flooded their email inboxes and phone lines. The village board meeting that night was packed with supporters of the minimum wage increase, far outweighing the numbers of those there in favor of opting out. Another factor to consider is that while wages remain relatively flat, the cost of living continues to rise dramatically. For example, the cost of food, shelter, and gas have all risen significantly in the past year. Gas skyrocketed more than 24%. Rent for a primary residence jumped 3.6%, and meals at restaurants and cafeterias rose 2.8%, according to a recent ChicagoTribune.com article. Studies have found that stagnated or decreased wages have played a major role in the dramatic rise in suburban poverty. The Social Impact Research Center reported that in the 2000s, wages in nearly all industries in the suburbs decreased far more than in Chicago. The report also stated that the poverty rate held steady in Chicago from 1990 to 2011, but increased 57% in the suburbs. Research looking at the effects of the Chicago minimum wage ordinance by the Illinois Economic Policy Institute and the University of Illinois Project for Middle Class Renewal found that its intended goal to increase earnings for low-income workers and combat income inequality is working. There's been a 2.5% increase in incomes for Chicago workers. Incomes were boosted for more than 330,000 total workers in low-paying occupations and industries. Incomes rose by 2.7% for the lowest paid workers compared to a gain of 2.3% for the median worker. The research noted higher consumer demand among low-income households, which indirectly created new jobs and offset any direct negative impact on employment.
Jerry, I'm going to have to ask you to give us a concluding thought, if you would.
Okay. I hope that you will reconsider and vote to institute the ordinance, which will improve the day-to-day lives of the residents of your community. I was close to being done.
Okay, thank you. Next is Tom Musar.
Hello. I know you mentioned earlier how you feel that there's no change since last year, and I feel differently about this. I feel there has been a whole year of data with other cities that have and have not opted out of the minimum wage increase, so we could see what has happened there and look at that and see if your decision was right or not. And I know previously you decided to increase the campaign contribution limits, and I know you have mentioned that you thought those were apples and oranges and different things, but the basic principle of inflation, I feel, affects them the same way. You could say inflation is mold. Both apples and oranges get moldy. So if the orange is moldy, we should check the apple for mold. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And next is Keith Mowens.
Thank you, President Hayes, trustees. On May 1st, 2017, this board voted to opt out of the Cook County ordinance that would have allowed the minimum wage to slowly rise to $13 an hour with 5 days of paid sick leave. I believe you all voted your conscience that day. I really believe that. There were good points to be made all around, and as you know, I respect all your thoughts and comments, always. But 3 minutes is just not enough time for adequate reconsideration of this topic. We all know that as conditions or plans change, this board will reconsider many issues. Consider the European Crystal Hotel. That took 2 years and 5 attempts before it passed this board. How many times will CA Ventures on Block 425 be brought before the board? And of course, the developers seem to get all the time they need before the board to air their new plans. But conditions have also changed surrounding the minimum wage, President Hayes. The economy is expanding at near full employment right now, record stock prices, soaring corporate profits, all since May of 2017. Yet real wages have stagnated or actually declined with expenses because expenses are higher. Here you need to think about increasing your campaign contributions. And income inequality has worsened since May 2017. Other towns have actually opted back into the ordinance as a result, but our minimum wage in Arlington Heights remains exactly the same, $8.25 an hour. So like developer projects that seem to get multiple hearings before the board, the minimum wage and sick leave issue also deserves another hearing before the board. A clear majority of Arlington Heights residents have favored raising the minimum wage. Fortunately, we still live in a democracy, at least for the time being anyway, and the board does follow Robert's Rules of Order as described by our municipal code, which means that any voting member on the board, here on the board, has the right to introduce new business to the agenda without the permission of the presiding officer. Finally, in my opinion, the minimum wage and sick leave issue deserves another hearing. I'm asking the board to reintroduce the minimum wage and sick leave issue as new business on a meeting agenda. Then we can have the community discussion that this topic deserves under new conditions that have happened since May 2017 that requires much longer than 3 minutes and beyond short sound bites. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Keith. Next is Peg Lane.
Poverty in U.S. suburbs has now surpassed poverty in urban areas, according to UC Berkeley economist Robert Reich. For all of 2015 and 2016, the People's Lobby and Reclaim Chicago, Northwest Suburbs, and other branches brought testimony of Chicagoans living on the Illinois state minimum wage of $8.25 to monthly meetings of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. The stories of destitute families in our area living on 2 or 3 part-time jobs were heartbreaking, and any health crisis could piece together family finances. Hospital administrators testified to the use of emergency rooms when health crises led to bankruptcies. When the opt-out was passed here last year, where was public input? Policies of this board deliberately limit public participation. Why is the Chamber of Commerce allowed to run this board? MIT determined that the basic minimum wage should be $12.50 in this area. I also wonder why new business isn't brought up at a committee of the whole instead of at a regular board meeting where it seems more likely to have public participation. Thank you.
Let me just say in response to what you just said, Ms. Laughlin, or Ms. Lane, this board, as I said earlier, went well over expectations in terms of allowing public input and taking and considering public input. There were communities that opted out of these ordinances without taking any discussion whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They didn't even take it on their public agenda. They did it on their consent agenda.
I know
so
that.
This board, as you know, you were here. For 2.5 meetings, we took public comment on this issue last year.
And what I'm referring to is the board referendums that the board didn't seem to acknowledge, that overwhelmingly supported this issue.
We did discuss, we took that input, we debated the merits of some of those studies and referendums. And the issue really in my mind, as I said a year ago, and as I'm going to say again tonight, is not whether the minimum wage should be increased. It's whether or not a local municipality should increase it. And as I said last year, and as the majority of the board agreed last year, this issue should really be handled by the state and federal governments. So you're really talking to the wrong governmental body.
Well, the fact is we can raise it here. So let's do that. Thank you.
Whether or not we can is whether or not we should, and I don't think we should. So if there's no further discussion from the board, we will move on in the agenda to old business. And we do have 2 items to report out from the Committee of the Whole meeting from August 27, 2018. And I'd first call on Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Mayor Hayes. Tonight, I'd like to move to propose a code amendment for truancy, as I did on the Committee of the Whole meeting for August 27th, 2018.
There was a second by Trustee Blackwood, so we need somebody else to second the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Trustee Tinaglia, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. In terms of discussion, could we just have from staff a summary of exactly what we're doing here and why we're doing it?
Sure. As you all know, staff proposed an updated truancy ordinance to the village board at a COW meeting on July 16th, and it was subsequently discussed and recommended for approval at another COW meeting on August 27th. The ordinance calls for the granting of the authority to cite parents or any other adult who induces or attempts to induce any child to be absent from school or knowingly harbors a child who is absent from school. The code currently grants the authority to issue citations to the students themselves, but not adults or parents who are preventing the child from attending school. As we discussed at the meeting, all 4 of the school districts that have schools in Arlington Heights support this ordinance. Citations currently and under the new proposed change would only be pursued as a last resort once a school district's extensive truancy process is exhausted and the police department has used all of its resources to get a child to go to school. Both the police department and the school districts will make every attempt to work with the child's family and their circumstances. Citations are extremely rare. The districts and the police department have resources to work with families for which language, work schedules, and many other factors may be barriers to getting children to school. Citing a parent will only occur as a last resort when a family is outright uncooperative. In addition to recommending approval of the ordinance, the Committee of the Whole also directed staff to administer future citations on truancy through the village's administrative adjudication process instead of going through the county court system. The board indicated that its desire to administer such cases in a more sensitive setting than the courthouse. Staff continues to believe that despite our best efforts in this area under the current ordinance, this new ordinance will help get additional children into school where our current tools and efforts have simply failed. Staff recommends approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Recklaus. I think very appropriate comments. Just in addition to that, before I go to the board, as Mr. Recklaus indicated, this is just another tool in the toolbox for our school districts to have to make sure that their kids are in school and getting the high-quality education that is afforded here in the village of Arlington Heights. This is a request from the schools through our police department, not a Village of Arlington Heights initiative that came down from the village board. And in no way, shape, or form is it a revenue maker for the Village of Arlington Heights. As Mr. Recklaus indicated, this is a last resort, and the potential situations where these tickets might occur are very, very few and far between. And so in no way is it a revenue maker for the village. It's never intended to be that. And so we are just glad to be able to assist in whatever way we can within the bounds of the law to make sure that our kids are in school and taking advantage of the great education that they can get here in our village. So further comments from the board. Trustee Sidor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with you, Mayor, even though I was on the losing end of that vote a couple weeks ago. It's a delicate situation. I thought we had a very, very, vigorous discussion and respectful discussion on this issue. My only hope is, and I've talked to Robin about this afterwards, is that we keep this as, even though we're moving it into the adjudication process versus the Rolling Meadows Courthouse, if we can keep these matters as private as possible, because we don't know. I mean, there's such a delicate, there is a myriad of delicate issues that we all discussed that evening, and that's my only hope. I'll vote again tonight no, to be consistent with my vote, because until we can get it to a point where I'm happy, that'll be my vote, but let's just keep in mind the delicate and sensitive issues that these children might be facing at home. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, let me say that I have the utmost respect for the school districts here in Arlington Heights and the police department, and I have the utmost confidence that the motivation for this change to the ordinance is good. Having said that, I am also going to vote no again tonight for two reasons. First of all, I think that if you cite a child, you're citing a family already. I don't feel that it's necessary to have the ability to cite twice. But more importantly, I have spoken with some people who work in this field, and they have overwhelmingly said to me that this is a behavioral health or a mental health issue, and in my mind, that means that this situation requires treatment or counseling or some kind of professional medical help. The truancy is a symptom, in my opinion, and it comes from fear, resentment, and anger. And in my mind, if we cite these children and assess a penalty, make them do community service, whatever, it's just going to increase that fear and resentment and possibly make the situation worse. For those reasons, I will be voting no tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Trustee Tinaglia.
So I think it's important that I share why I moved to pass this ordinance change. And I was listening to superintendents from the school districts 25 and 214. I was listening to our police chief and his officers who spend time in our schools. And it was very, very clear to me at how sensitive this is and how much these folks try so hard to offer guidance and counseling and driving and pickup and delivery and food and you name it, anything they can to get these handful of cases solved. And they were at their wits' end. And the way I understand it right now, prior to this happening, these children can be cited at a last resort, but with some sort of a penalty, financial penalty. But what can't happen right now is parents can't be called or fined as a result. And it is my hope with this extra tool in their pocket, maybe, just maybe, the fear that a child might run into that his father or his mother might be notified and possibly fined if I don't show up at school. I think that's a reasonable conversation that our police and our superintendents and principals should be able to have as a last result. Certainly, I'm convinced that they're going to do everything they can otherwise, as they currently do, but this is one more tool in the belt. And along with that, the change in policy that we've made, that staff has recommended, and that Trustee Sidor and Baldino have suggested that we do, bringing this action to our own little mini court version here that we will do in our own village hall, as opposed to sending it to Rolling Meadows, where it is amongst a litany of other types of criminals and other kinds of issues. This will make it so much better. So to me, this is a win-win for everyone all the way through, and I'm glad to do my job to help out to get this solved. And that's really it.
Thank you. Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I will vote in favor of this, as I did that night at the COW meeting. To me, it was important that I heard from the superintendents that were there and the police department, and how, first of all, how hard they work to get children back in school using every other avenue that they can in terms of resources that are available within the schools and outside the schools. And when they are, in my mind, literally begging for this one little, well, this one, it's not so little, but important opportunity to get a child back in the classroom, that I felt it was important to support their request. I do believe that, as others have said, moving it to the adjudication process and not having it in the courthouse will help give a very important amount of privacy to the child and the family, and I think that's the appropriate way to handle this. Thank you.
We do have one member of the audience who wishes to address the village board on this agenda item, Lisa Rotenberg. And Lisa, you're just reminded of the 3-minute time limit, if you would.
Good evening, Mayor Hayes and Board of Trustees. My name is Lisa Rotenberg, and I stand in opposition to the proposed ordinance to ticket parents of students whom schools deem chronic truants. Chronic truancy is a symptom of an underlying problem, and ticketing parents does nothing to address the problem underlying a particular truancy case. We all know school is unbearably stressful for many children, and research has shown pediatric emergencies and suicides decline during both summer vacation and shorter school breaks. Therefore, schools should work with families to identify and actually solve the problems which can lead to stress-based truancy. And I think we need to come to terms with the fact that full-time school attendance may not be in the best interest of every child. Ultimately, it is the parent's responsibility to decide when a student needs a day off school. Ticketing parents in a ham-fisted attempt to coerce a parent to force a child to go to school is not in the best interest of that child. It is both morally wrong and counterproductive for the village to attempt to insert this wedge between parents and children. Thank you.
Right, Lisa, I think you do have some good points, and we did discuss a lot of those at our committee of the whole meeting last week in terms of the number of other counseling services and other services that are utilized first before something like this would be used as a last resort. So there will be a lot of discretion on the part of the school district and personnel in terms of their recommendations before utilizing this tool, and on the part of our police department in terms of actually writing the ticket. It's not going to be a case of first impression. It's going to be a case of last impression as something that might help. And so that's the reason why we're doing it. But you raised some very good points. Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Rosenberg, I think I addressed your email I think you had sent me previously, and you know, we voted, or I voted on this, as far as to consider this only because the schools asked us to, and they indicated to us this was a course of last resort as mentioned, and it is not for the day, occasional day here or there where a student needs a day off or, you know, has something going on. This is a case of chronic truancy where they've approached the student, they've worked with the student, they've done everything they can within their power to try to get the student to come to school. So where the student hasn't responded, this is the measure that they felt they needed to help get the parents to go along with getting the child to go to school. And so that's the reason I voted for this, because the schools asked for us. The police indicated that probably in the last 3 to 5 years, they've maybe had a dozen cases in all the schools that they've dealt with that this kind of situation would merit the parent being cited. So based upon that information that was provided to us, I think that's the reason that I voted for it and felt it was necessary to have this, and we moved it from the county courthouse to the local hearing officer to help the child with his privacy and keep it in-house versus being embarrassed in front of a county court system with other people that are there. So, thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board on this agenda item? Ms. Lane.
My master's degree is in special education, including special education law, and my 34 years of experience in special education at elementary and high school levels allow me to comment on this, that I have 2 questions about data gathering. One is, what general research is there that proves the effectiveness of this type of procedure? And secondly, what is the percentage of students out of that dozen in the last 3 to 5 years who are special education eligible students?
Right, is the staff prepared to answer those?
We aren't able to get that information. We don't have access to the information in terms of whether they're special education eligible on a tracking basis. But in terms of research, our officers have found that in the situations when they have the rare instances when they've everything else has failed, when they've tried working with counseling, when they've tried working with the family, in those rare cases where they've had to issue a citation, it has been effective. But what they've found is when it's an adult that's keeping the child from getting there, they basically have to stop their efforts. And that's after they work with them at every possible level, and the school district works with them in every possible way, social workers, meetings with the family, etc. This is only going to be used when they've exhausted all of their other efforts, because we would prefer not to issue a citation. But what they found is when they have done it, when they've had to do it as a last resort, it has been effective in terms of, but not, we haven't been able to do it in terms of parents.
Okay. And I would agree with the previous speaker who said that there is an obvious stress issue there that needs to be addressed, and to provide another punishment does not point towards effectiveness.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lane. Okay. Anyone else wish to address the board on this item? Mr. Musar.
Thanks. I'm just concerned about this as the whole idea of this punishment for the parents and stuff. If they've been trying all these other things and they haven't been working, in my opinion, the parent isn't super involved with the child and very helpful in that aspect. And I just wonder about the possibility of the parent and turning abusive towards the child in this circumstance, so which I feel is worse than the truancy issue. So I feel like that could be potentially a problem.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other comments then from the audience, anything further from the board on this? Seeing none, we've got a motion by Trustee Tinaglia, seconded by Trustee LaBedz. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
We have motion carries on a vote of 4-2.
Correct.
All right. So the ordinance, we need to pass the ordinance. Can we have a motion to take the ordinance up at this time?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to move the legal ordinance item up in the agenda to this time by Trustee Rosenberg, seconded by Trustee Tinaglia. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Is there a motion? Trustee Tinaglia?
Oh, wait.
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
No.
Trustee Baldino?
No.
President Hayes?
Yes. All right, motion carries.
Motion carries.
So the ordinance is approved. All right, thank you all for your input on this item, and hopefully it will be effective as we hope. So thank you all. All right, we move on then the agenda to the consent agenda. No, we have one other item under old business.
Take that for John. Take it for John.
Yeah, we have one other item under old business, and that's the review of the Metropolis Theater governance. And we had a motion by Trustee Scaletta that evening, seconded by Trustee Rosenberg. I'll give it to Trustee Rosenberg as a seconder. Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move tonight as I did the seconded the night of August 27th, but Committee of the Whole recommend to the Village Board to direct staff to update the PAM governance agreement to reflect changes to the PAM board regarding the size of the PAM board. I believe the funding was not approved.
There's additional language being added to clarify the existing funding policies, but the board did not wish to change the funding policies.
And funding, I'll let the second. Yeah.
Second.
Okay, then motion by trustee Rosenberg, seconded by trustee Tinaglia. Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to inform everybody of what we're doing here, we increased the board size from 7 to 9, as well as remove the restriction that all members of the board had to be residents of Arlington Heights. And I believe we're allowing two non-residents.
Two of the board's 4 appointees.
Two of the board's 4 appointees
need to be residents.
to be non-residents to be on the board. As
Okay.
well as some other funding changes in the language of the agreement.
Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, voice vote okay?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Now we move on to the consent agenda. Are there any members of the board who wish to vote no, to remove any item on the consent agenda? Any members of the audience wish to remove any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none. Any members of the board wish to vote no or pass on any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
By trustee Tinaglia, seconded by trustee LaBedz. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. Move on then to new business, and the first item is Chapter 28 text amendments regarding the R7 district. Mr. Recklaus.
Thank you, Mayor. Over the past year, we've been reviewing all of Chapter 28, which relates to zoning, for just cleanup and looking at how things are written and making sure it reflects current practice and what the board's current goals are. Back in June, we talked about some concepts for changes to the R7 zoning district, and there's been subsequent memoranda on that issue as well. We want to present those formally this evening and walk you through what we're talking about in terms of changes, and I'll let Mr. Perkins do that.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As Mr. Reckless mentioned, this was discussed at the Plan Commission and briefly at the Village Board during the first phase of the zoning code amendments and also phase 2. That entailed fairly comprehensive changes to streamline and modernize our zoning code and make some changes to that. We held off on the recommendation on the R7 district due to the fact that CA Ventures was going through the public hearing process on the southern portion of Block 425, and we didn't want these changes to get construed as trying to favor that development in any way. So many of the changes that the board has already approved for the R5 and the R6 are similar type of changes as what I'll walk through this evening. So this is just the description of the R7 zoning district. There's no change to this. This is the high density zoning classifications that ring around the downtown area. This exhibit shows in yellow the existing properties that are zoned R7. Not all of them are developed as R7, but many of them are. And then the kind of brownie color represents those areas or properties that have the potential to be rezoned through a petition and public hearing before the village board, some of which we've heard over the years. So the changes really try to reflect past practice as far as some of these sites, the ones highlighted in yellow. Many of them don't meet the current setback requirements that are within the R7 district. So this is a quick summary. There's no change to the height limit, although in the R6 and the R5 we did increase the height limit. So in the R6, for example, we increased the height limit to 50 feet. This particular district we're making and recommending no changes. We are simplifying the spacing standards between multifamily buildings in the code currently. There's a different spacing requirement depending upon whether you're having a living room versus a kitchen across from a building, and it's really challenging for both the architect and staff as they're site planning a site. Every time a unit changes or a room in a unit changes, it changes all the setback requirements. So we're recommending eliminating the 5 or 6 different setbacks between buildings and just having it be a straight 25-foot setback. We're also recommending eliminating the enhanced setbacks that are required for buildings that are over 40 feet and just having a standard front yard setback of 25 feet. The same with the side yard setback, be a standard 10% of the lot width. The exterior side yard has no change. That's typically 20 feet. It is a complex provision, but there's no change to that provision. The rear yard currently is a 30-foot setback, and there's no change to that. The maximum building coverage, we're recommending increasing that from 45% to 55% of the land area. So this is kind of a strikeout. We can come back to this if there are questions. As you can see, most of it is deleting many of those spacing requirements that I referenced earlier. But to put it in graphic terms, this is an exhibit that we talked about at the June Committee of the Whole meeting. This is what the current setbacks are if they're applied to a 40-foot building, a 50-foot building, or a 60-foot building. So the front yards in this particular case on the west and the east, and the side yard on the kind of to the top of this slide, they all increase as the building gets taller. The proposal would be to simplify that, to have two 25-foot setbacks in this particular example, 20 feet for the exterior side yard and 15 for the side yard to the north in this particular case. For the R6 that was already approved, those would be identical setbacks. So the Plan Commission discussed this at a public hearing, and they did make a motion to recommend these changes to the Village Board, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks, Charles. Questions or comments from the board? Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Charles, there was I think it was page 4 of the Plan Commission minutes, something Commissioner Warskow asked something about an option in lieu of detention in these areas, and is there? And then Mr. Enright said the short answer is no. So does that mean there is no ability to fee in lieu of detention for these things?
Typically not. The only fee in lieu of is if it's a 2-lot subdivision or 3-lot subdivision, unless anything more than that, it has to provide detention. The village used to allow a fee in lieu of, but as with the most recent cases, we have been requiring on-site detention. And that has no bearing on the zoning code. That's a different section of the village code.
Okay. So I guess there is nothing in the code that says we must, as far as we have the option to defer that, or correct?
I believe there is some flexibility there, but the current practice is to require it unless there are some extenuating circumstances or it's a very small lot subdivision.
Mr. Eklund.
I was just going to add, I mean, I think particularly in the downtown area, as we've done extensive modeling over the last couple of years, staff's recommendation is going to be that everything that developments provide for their own detention, because anything less will interfere with the modeling that we've done and you know, push water somewhere we don't want it to be.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from the board? Trustee Tinaglia.
So speaking from a position of a person who uses these types of codes and ordinances throughout the communities up and down this railroad track from Park Ridge to Woodstock, I can tell you that for the past 25 years, our zoning code has been nothing short of difficult in a lot of areas. And thanks to Charles and his staff recently, there are certain things here, and this is a really good example of it, of just cleaning it up. It's not making life, you know, easy for any developer to come in and do things that they shouldn't do. These changes just make it more logical, easy to understand, and so that when developers do come in here, they know what they're dealing with. And the one, for example, when you put a building facing another building, and if it's a living room facing a kitchen, it changes how far apart they have to be. I mean, whoever wrote that 25 years ago, I don't know what they're thinking, but it, you know, rooms inside can change from a kitchen to a bedroom to a living room to a family room, and then the spacing changes. So taking those kinds of that kind of language out of here makes everyone happier, I do believe. So I'm all in favor of these changes. Thanks, Charles.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. I just have a comment, and that is, now that we're simplifying this code, I want staff to make sure that developers adhere to it. I don't want to see a lot of variations coming in now that we've trying to eliminate some of these difficulties that Trustee Tinaglia has just pointed out. So I think developers need to work really hard to work within this existing simplified code instead of coming forward with a variation of 24.5 feet instead. Maybe that's a tiny amount, but I would like to see developers adhere to the code as much as possible. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none. Anybody in the audience wish to address the board on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to approve by Trustee Tinaglia, seconded by Trustee Rosenberg. Comment?
No, I would second it.
Oh, by Trustee Baldino. The second was Trustee Baldino.
It was both of us.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, we moved on then to our last item under new business, and that's the Arlington Downs PUD amendment and plat of subdivision and amendment to the SUP, land use variation and variations, lots of stuff. So located at 3400 West Euclid Avenue. You got a team present. Who's the spokesman? Should come forward. And if you'd both just introduce yourself for the record.
I am David Trandell with the developer.
Mark Klemper with OKW Architects.
Okay. Go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to say hello to the trustees again and Mr. Mayor, and we appreciate everybody's time. I did want to just touch on a little bit of history. You know, this has been a long journey. We've become friends and more than acquaintances, and the staff has worked extraordinarily hard with us for the last, I can't believe I'm saying this, for 7 years since we acquired the site. We originally, just as a background, we acquired the first 19 acres in a negotiated short sale from M&I Bank back when the former Sheridan was about a year and a half after it shut down in 2011. And subsequently came forth to the board with a plan that we felt was, a big idea, one which in some cases was wildly accepted, thanks to some of our partners here, like with Stoneleigh, and the adaptive reuse of the former hotel into, high-end luxury living has been very well received. What we didn't foresee back in 2011 and 2012 was really just some of the sea change events that have happened in all our daily lives, from the Amazon effect and just people's change of desires and their desire for serviceability, walkability, and a certain not even so much downsizing in their world, but really simplification. So through this last 6-7 years, what we are presenting today is really an evolution of what the market has come back to us to tell us what this site really wants to be. I know we all have had ideas what we thought we wanted it to be, but at the end of the day, I think we want to get something finished here that we can all be very proud of, something that will get finished in short order, hopefully. I don't know if you remember, but I had more hair and less gray when we first got together. And, we've been in it a long time, and that's no one's issue other than the fact that we've been working really hard, and we've had a lot of close calls with some ideas, from theaters and other things. But I think we're at this point now where we have a plan that will get done. So I want to turn over to Mark Klemper from OKW, who's been brought in to make this look pretty. So.
Thanks, David. Okay. I just want to echo David's comments about all the hard work staff has done to help us through the various changes that we're requesting and process the reasonable requests for relief and accommodation to the market factors that David mentioned. So I'd be happy to go through that in detail, but I was hopeful that the staff report and the extensive exhibits would be more self-explanatory. And moreover, I'd be glad to answer your questions. We also have Pat Dimmer from Erickson Engineering that can talk about civil-related alterations as well on site and then the public rights-of-way. But the gist of it is there are a number of requests to make the current plan as it stands characteristically similar to what the original approval was, moving and migrating portions of it to different areas of the site, making a residential focused and primary use on certain other areas of the site, all in keeping with that requires us to come back in front of the Plan Commission, which we had done and gained their approval or recommendation, and in front of your body as well for a final approval. So with that said, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have or be able to answer those.
What I'd like you to do, if you could, is utilizing this schematic here that's in front of the audience and us, explain exactly what's going to be, what is currently proposed, and the timeline for getting that done.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. So within the confines of the site, the corner at Euclid and Rowling, it is, I'm not sure if this is, the corner of Euclid and Rowling is the main intersection, and then the access points along Euclid, Stonegate, there's a main entrance there, and then along Rowling, Stonegate Boulevard winds around as well. The majority of the site within that boundary is currently undeveloped. The proposal is to utilize similar assemblage of retail buildings, with one distinct difference is the hotel, which sits to the left along Rowling, was initially approved sitting north of Stonegate, and the proposed request is to move that south of Stonegate into this retail quadrant. The other substantial change is east of Stonegate Boulevard along Euclid. There were two sites that were configured in a retail and then behind it a residential zone. The request has been to eliminate the retail zone and divide the residential zone differently so as to allow for individual but separate buildings to be developed at two different times. So going through the plan itself, do I have the ability to?
You can use the advance on that remote to advance the slides.
On this?
Yes.
Unless I'm pointing it in the wrong location, it's not working.
While you're doing that, if I could just touch on timelines, because Mr. Mayor asked about timelines. We are, with the plan that's in front of the board right now,
go back to that previous slide,
okay.
If you would.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the plan that's in front of the board right now, obviously the One Arlington is up and going and 95% occupied. The hotel, which Mark pointed to move forward, we did enter into an agreement with General Hotels out of Indianapolis. That was a very difficult. This has been a tough piece of the puzzle, is to find the hotel operator and owner that wanted to invest the capital needed to facilitate, and that was a critical part of the original PD, which really put a brick on all future residential pieces. So we've been working on this. We found a unicorn, and a lot of it is because this does fit a hole in their donut as a corporate entity. They've got over 50 properties around the country. The EVP from General Hotels originally is from Arlington Heights, so he's got, innate knowledge of the market, likes it. So what they asked for, and actually Doug Reichel, who's here, really spearheaded that and brought them in, was to move it forward. And we're ready to close on that as soon as this, assuming you're willing to approve it, once it's approved, we'll close on that. And they want to begin within 30 days of the approval to start construction on a hotel. That's a big move for everybody. And then as it relates to the residential piece, we are prepared. Our timeline to start construction on that is November 1st. So those two pieces are, that's a big change for what's been going on out there in the last few years. What we haven't touched on is, we can't see from this picture, but the crown jewel that was tossed into our purchase was the former water park, which is a 50,000, give or take 50,000 square foot, $25.5 million build back in 2005, and that's been a very challenging adaptive reuse. We went down the path with a number of water park operators. That world's changing too, and it's been the Dells are even making, when you go up to the Wisconsin Dells, they still have young kids. They're even migrating more to dry parks and more health conscious things than just big pools. We were able to find, actually through the help of the Village of Arlington Heights and Mike Mertes and his efforts, to bring forth a user from the city in First Ascent, which will, we have a signed lease to take that entire space, which is also part of, we went through the special use permit process with everybody, and they're ready to go. So those three elements account for about $130 million of construction, kind of all going on at the same time, which is a great thing. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let me go to the staff before I go to the board for questions. Charles, did you have anything to add?
If I can just walk through quickly the requested action, and I can also show on an exhibit a little clearer the changes from the approved plan to the proposed plan. So the Arlington Downs developers, they are seeking an amendment to numerous ordinances that have been approved over the past few years, as well as several variations, some to allow residential as a principal structure for one of the buildings, a preliminary plat of subdivision, and then also to amend the special use for the hotel. I do want to mention we have met with General Hotels a while back. They do have a strong portfolio of hotels. They have also submitted full construction drawings for their building permit. So we are confident that and hopeful that that will move forward. They're also seeking some variations for on-site parking. That changes. The variation actually reduces from what was previously approved by the village board. And then a couple of the variations dealing with dwellings on the first floor and loading zones within the commercial area of Zone D. So this is a site, everybody's very familiar with it, on our perimeter, Rolling Meadows to the west and south, the industrial office area to the north, and then Arlington Park Racetrack to the east. So this is the original, not the original, but the latest approved plan. You can see here the hotel was originally approved way north. The retail buildings were larger, more linear. There was about an 11,000 square foot retail building in this area, and then this was a residential building, about 463 units in one building. The proposed plan changes that a little bit, shifts the hotel to the south, removes some of the retail, but it mainly eliminates medical office that was previously proposed. It eliminates the retail in this area, and the proposal is for 263 residential apartments right here, and then future phases for residential in this area and to the east. So these areas are future phases. And while we've evaluated that as part of a parking, that's part of the parking variation, they will need to come back and amend that, and also some of the prior approvals, especially the First Ascent and Funtopia approval, requires detailed parking studies of this parking area here to make sure there's sufficient parking for this use before approval of future residential in that area. This just summarizes the changes from the current PUD to the proposed PUD. Mainly, biggest changes were the ones that I referenced. From a parking point of view, the approved PUD last amendment was in 2015. Had a deficit of 498 spaces. The current one has a deficit of 435. The phases that are part of this approval, the deficit is a little over 100 for those phases. So the village board has a chance to reevaluate those future phases as they get submitted for review and approval. Loading, they are seeking a variation from the loading berths in this particular zone, Zone D. Most likely loading would occur, off the parking area at off-peak times, in front of the hotel, in between these two outlot buildings in this area, and then on the side or in the drive-through areas. Now, no tenants have been identified for these retail buildings, so the actual layout may change slightly once those tenants are known. The last point I'd like to talk about is the affordable housing element. So this was originally going to be brought before you in August, but we delayed that in order to have discussions with the developer about the village board's desire and request to see actual affordable units included in the development, as opposed to just paying the fee in lieu of. So this is kind of a history going back from 2006 with Timber Court to about a month and a half ago with the 4 North Hickory, the progression of how that affordable housing policy has been implemented for sale and apartment products. I'll not go through each of them, but that has been provided to the board in the packet. When we talked to the developer, we looked at 3 main areas: the cost of providing an affordable unit or purchasing, the financial impact that would have on the development, and then if units aren't provided, then what should that fee be? So we first took a look at the cost of providing affordable units, or how much it may cost if the village had money in the trust fund to actually go out and acquire them. There is one 40-unit building that's for sale right now in Arlington Heights. It's for sale at $6.3 million, which is an average of $157,500 per unit. We also had data from a tax increment financing assisted development, and their units on average are about $252,000 a unit. And then thirdly, we got information from the developer on what their average cost would be per unit, and we kind of took a look at that. And the next slide will talk about that a little bit. The developer, when we talked to them, they initially offered up 7 affordable units. We felt that was not sufficient, so we had another meeting with them. They came back and offered 9, and then provided data on the lost revenue that they would have as a result of those units and how it impacted their potential resale of the property. So they estimated an average rent for their units would be approximately $2,300 a month. An affordable unit would be an average of about $1,076 a month. So they would lose $1,300 per affordable unit per month. $15,000 per unit equates to about $140,000 annually that they would lose in revenue. Now, there are certain programs through Cook County and others where they can get housing vouchers and things like that help close that gap, but they definitely will have some lost revenue. And in what they provided to us, their estimate was in an 8 or 10 year period, they would have lost revenue in in the same amount of what they had originally agreed to provide as a fee in lieu of. So in the end, we did get them to agree to provide 9 affordable units. These would be provided in perpetuity. In looking at the cost or value of those units to either build or purchase, we feel that would be a value of about $1.49 million. They have also agreed to provide a fee for 4 additional units at $25,000 per unit. So the total value of providing 13 units, 9 actual units and 4 with a fee is just under $1.6 million. In 2012, their approval, the top portion of this slide, equated to about $1.3 million in a fee, and then in June of this year they went back to the Housing Commission, and that was changed to 15% of the units at a $25,000 rate, and that would have equated to just under $1 million. So based on that, staff feels that the 9 units and the fee for the 4 is a good proposal. It gets units that are actually provided. There is a recommendation to modify the Plan Commission recommendation to deal with that, and also in the exhibit that's attached to the recommendation, it talks about the mix of the units, making sure the units are comparable to the other units and that they are in perpetuity, and the developer provides a report on an annual basis to demonstrate that they are being rented to people that have income levels that meet our criteria. So that was a little lengthy, and these are the recommendations, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Charles. Questions from the board? Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. So if the building were to go condo, let's say at some point in time, what would happen? I don't know if Charles wants to answer this. What would happen to those affordable units? Is there such a provision if there's a conversion?
There isn't. I believe there is and I'd have to double check, in one of the earlier ordinances there's a condition that says if they are looking to convert from apartments to condominiums, they have to seek village board approval. So we would have to address that at that time.
Okay, thank you. So when you originally, 7 years ago, you had obviously great ideas for a large hotel. So now we're down to, I think it's 116 units. So that was the best we could do as far as based upon the conditions today, or?
I think that's correct. I think, if you recall, we had an approval for up to 240 hotel rooms, of which we're going to do in 2 phases. If you recall, we were all looking at the lost revenue coming off of the shutdown Sheridan, and I think that was a big driver to how we ended up with that number, thinking that we could at least get there. There's a few dynamics going on in the market that are even beyond necessarily economic, and that is there's a real shortage of viable brand flags available. There's a couple hotel operators, namely First Hospitality and Whiteco, that dominate the market, and they control all the Marriott, all the Hiltons, all the Starwoods flags that you'd be looking for, and so there's very few available branded flags that are even left. So that's something that at that point in 2011, we've seen like the Hampton Inn come in over at Brandhurst. Well, that kind of knocks us out of the Hampton. There's a lot of those kind of things that happen, and of course, when Schaumburg built that area off behind Meacham with a number of select service hotels, they really scooped up all the available flags. So we were left with somewhat of a small choice of branded hotel opportunities. So there's a lot of things that led to that, but traditionally, full service hotels, we learned near and dear that a union-run full-service hotel in the suburbs does not operate profitably, and that's why it's shut down. So going to a select service was the next best step. We've been working really hard. We've gone through every major brand to try to bring this to fruition, and this is kind of where we ended up. But what I will touch on, if you look at the demographic who lives in One Arlington right now, and what I'd call the active nature of those people, and it really dovetails nicely with what's going on with First Ascent, and First Ascent's a big draw, 400 to 700 people a day to the site that wouldn't otherwise go there. If the brand that General Hotels is working with is Vibe, it's a new kind of I'd call it hip and cool in my age, but that's a much more pattern to millennials and health conscious people, and I think that is very symbiotic and very simpatico with everything else that's going on in the site. So it's actually versus a flag that might not fit. So it's actually kind of the right call at the right time.
So I was just curious because I, obviously thought with the racetrack too, with the proximity of that there might be some ability to draw a nicer hotel as far as to draw the kind of sometimes the clientele that comes there as far as they're looking for sometimes more upscale hotel, and rather than having to go to other venues around us as far as that goes. So I didn't know if that was an issue.
We've always designed in their suites, you know, talking with the track and trying, because there's definitely, you know, a place there. It'd be nice if the track ran more than 4 days a week or 3 days a week. You know, that's an issue too, right?
Yeah,
So-
something none of us have control over that. So, so as far as in the parking studies that you've done, there seems to be a significant deficit in this new, I guess, new area that you're proposing, I think, as far as with the ADR2 and some of the retail and all that. So I was just curious, seems like there's a large deficit there, as opposed to, I think phase 1 seems to be pretty much fully covered, I think. And then phase 3 seemed like it was covered based upon the study that you did, but it seems like this phase was deficit significantly.
Go ahead.
Well, most of the deficit, I believe, for the future phases is the between what the ordinance requires at two spaces per unit to both what the traffic study prove and what is currently an approved variance to 1.5 spaces per unit. So those are the standards by which we were projecting parking spaces, although the deficit is increased because of that, the variance between the 2 to 1.5.
Because I think it was in Erickson Engineering's study when you put in I guess the apartments ADR 2, 3, and 4, there was 1,600 required and about 1,200 proposed.
Good evening, Steve.
And so I was just curious as to.
Steve Corcoran with Erickson Engineering can answer.
Steve, how are you?
Hi, good. Again, Steve Corcoran, Director of Transportation, Erickson Engineering. Basically, a lot of the deficit, as Mark mentioned, is your code requires for multifamily 2 spaces per dwelling unit. And what we've seen basically nationwide as well as Chicago area, multifamily, the number of units are dropping. I'm sorry, the number of cars ownership has been dropping over the last decade. And we've reflected that in both the census data for the village of Arlington Heights for multifamily units. We looked at that, as well as we did surveys. And then we originally projected 1.45 when we first started this process, and we went back and actually found at 1 Arlington that it was the actual parking demand is 1.31. So again, with the village staff, we came up to 1.5 just to provide that little cushion for the reduction.
So in your proposed spaces, you have numbers with subtractions below them. What are those subtractions on page 1 of your introduction, where it says zoning requirements?
Oops, wrong report. Oh, that's just the difference from the code requirement for those different areas.
Oh, okay.
So like for 1 Arlington and the 25N co-working, we're 13, in that case, we're 13 spaces short of the code requirement from what we provide, what's been provided.
Oh, okay.
And then just work down the line.
And so while you're up here, on the traffic, it was page 15 of your table 6. You talked about LOS being an F on a southbound right turn coming off of at Euclid and Stonegate. Is there any remedies that we can do to resolve that?
Well, it's for the southbound left. Well, it's part of the ordinance that has been approved, and I don't believe it's changing as part of this, is if the volume, the left turn volume gets high enough that we warrant a traffic signal, then the developer would be responsible for installing a traffic signal. It's just going to be a learning process for the people that drive there, because there's 2 ways to make a left turn on a Euclid that are signalized. They can either exit on the Rowling and make the light there, or exit onto Salt Creek and make the left turn there. It's just the volume there. I mean, it's like any arterial road you try to turn on. during rush hour, sometimes you gotta wait a little longer. But we do have alternatives where people can use either one of the two traffic signals. But we don't, unfortunately, we meet the spacing requirement that Cook County would require for signals, but right now we don't even come close to meeting the signal warrants or the minimum volume for traffic signals.
Okay. So it'll just be a stop sign for right now?
Yeah, stop sign. It'll be a little bit of a learning process for the people who visit there regularly.
So as far as, Mark, maybe you can talk about the senior housing. So how many units is that proposed to be, potentially?
Is anticipated to be up to 180 units.
And will they be similar to like apartments, or?
It's really age restricted, potentially age restricted, so it's not senior per se, but it's age restricted, so it'd be 55 and older is what's contemplated.
And they'll be similar, I mean, they'll be apartment-like units, or?
Correct. Probably a little higher end than the typical apartment, you know, because it'd be empty nesters. You know, it's a new phenom that I don't quite put my arms around why people race to a 55 and older place, but it does exist and people are interested in it. And we've been approached by a handful of national operators that are interested in the area.
And so is that the senior housing, is that ADR 3 or 4?
We really don't contemplate any senior, what I would call traditional senior housing.
Age restricted.
Yeah. No, ADR 4 would be, you know, market rentals, non-restricted.
Okay, the 3 would be restricted?
It could be, you know, that's our thought right now. But that's what we're thinking right now, that it would be restricted.
Okay.
It's a different, you know, it's a different asset class. It gives a little different, you know, look and feel, because, you know, there's a fair amount of units there, and I think a little differentiation is probably healthy for pricing.
So how tall will that building potentially be? The age-restricted one? 5, 4, 5,
yeah,
6
in
stories?
in the same vein.
The same range as ADR 2 contemplated, which is 5 stories, but a low-rise building, basically.
But lesser number of units, because you're saying only 180 units versus the 263 and
yeah, it's a smaller footprint, but it'd be 5 stories is my guess.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Trustee Tinaglia.
Hey, Charles, on this site, can you go back to that rendering?
Which
or is
one?
it the main overall rendering that was in the beginning, or is that not part of your, I'm sorry, it was the other presentation. So if I look at this rendering, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different buildings shown on here, plus the old Sheridan that's been renovated. 6. And just for the record, are any of these buildings built except for the Sheridan? The Sheridan the only building there?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was a renovation?
It was a renovation.
Existing. How many stories is that building?
It's 12 or 13.
And how long has this project been? I mean, I remember when you guys came, I was on the design commission at the time, so, and I've been on this board for 6 years. You came in with a proposal, and it was very equestrian. It had to do with the racetrack. It seemed like it was all about the relationship with the racetrack. It seems like where we're going now is really different from that. Am I correct? It's not as much connected to the racetrack.
I think that's fair. Correct.
And is it because the folks that are in that apartment building and then this whole Ascent project that's going to be happening is a different mix?
I don't think a lot. I mean, I think that's correct. I think it's a different demographic than what we thought originally.
Yeah. So time has changed, the project has changed, and we have to roll with how things are. It's not something you necessarily chose to do. It's just
For sure.
the way things are going. I think I have a couple thoughts on this. And, you know, there's an old design that came in here, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was heroic. I think those were the words I used as a design commission chairman back then. This is heroic. It was ridiculously great. And I'm just a little bit afraid that we have to try to maintain the integrity of this project. Right now, how many years have you been on this then totally? Is it 7?
Yeah, since June 4th of 2011.
Okay.
So we bought it. So a year before that. So.
And I guess my point is, nothing new has been built out there. It's only the renovation on the existing building. And we've seen at this board level, design commission prior and design commission current, lots of proposals for different buildings, lots of approved projects, lots of things that have been revised. And I think I just want to really, really drive home the fact that whatever does get built there new is quality and as awesome as it can possibly be with the type of architecture that it should be. OKW is an awesome firm. You guys are great developers. I just hope that you can carry on in that fashion. This hotel vibe that you have planned here, I remember at one point you brought in a project that looked like it was going to be a typical highway roadside budget hotel, and I was very, very against that. And I would be very against that now. So I'm hoping that it is as cool and as hip, as you said.
Me too. It will be, though.
As you had suggested, because that's what this needs to be. So I won't belabor that point any further. Quality and carrying through with what you had planned on all along.
And just to dovetail that, because that's an excellent point, Trustee. You know, we have got $70 million invested in the tower already. Mm-hmm. We've got another $40 million invested throughout the rest of the site, if you will. So nowhere along the lines can we afford to go backwards as it relates to quality, amenities, and service, because that will kill the whole thing. So, but I'm completely agree with you.
Excellent. For Charles, another question. So we talked a little bit, you presented 9 units of affordable housing and then 4 fee in lieu, totaling 13. How many units total?
In the phase that we're talking about is 263. And the future phases, we'll have the same discussion with the developer on the inclusion of units in those other phases.
That's ADR 3 and ADR 4.
Correct.
But if I look at where we stand right now, how many units are in the old Sheridan building and how many are in this new current proposal total, that if you take what's done plus what is currently on the book on the docket here, we're talking about 13 units. What is that percentage? How many units is it, first of all, total?
Well, the current building got a waiver as part of the Housing Commission and the first PUD in 2019 due to the cost of, trying to get that first project going. So there's about just over 200 units there. So total in the one Arlington and the ADR 2, there's about 465 units approximately.
So 265 now plus 200 before.
Correct.
So if you're talking 465 total, and 13 units are being proposed as, well, 9 would be actually affordable rate units, and the other 4 are going to be 25,000 apiece fee in lieu.
Correct.
That's the $100,000 that we're talking about. So 13 units out of that 465. That would be a good question for Trustee Rosenberg. What's that percentage, Trustee Rosenberg?
Approximately 3%.
Approximately 3%. See how fast he is with that? He is awesome. So 3%.
Less than 3%. Actually.
Less than 3%. And I just know that this board, we all together here, spearheaded by a couple trustees, maybe even Trustee Sidor on the other end over there, we've all been really critical of this. This is something that everyone here wants to make an impact on. So we gave some relief, and we gave a long dissertation to the last developer that was here about this. So I just wonder if that's the right number, Charles. I just wonder if that's not, if we're not selling ourselves too short here on this. But I'll leave that for other people to discuss. And then I want to ask one real quick question. Stay right where, go back on that slide you had a second ago, the site plan. There you go. Building E along Rowling and Building A, is this the current site plan that you guys are after right now? Is this it?
Yes.
So Building E and Building A, right? Go to the rendering again for me, please. Building E is the vibe. Building A is right there. What is on the corner there? What am I seeing on the very corner, those vertical lines? Is that a fountain, or what is that? Is there no building on that corner there,
It's a
right?
gateway sign.
That's a
So
sign.
there's a welcome to Arlington Heights along the base that's illuminated with ground lights
Okay.
and landscaped. And then the poles to the left are 3 illuminated pole lights.
And what are the things down low?
To the right,
To the
it's
right, to the east of that.
a large sign, development sign.
Okay.
On top of the base.
So that whole corner is dedicated to some wonderful design features that are going to be park-like and
Correct. It's
just
a-
nothing
it's a-
but awesome and cool and hip, right?
It's an entrance, a gateway to Arlington Heights.
Right.
And I should add, there is a condition that is required to be developed in more detail and subject to further review. And by the village, they're proposing a LED sign that's not allowed at this location, so they would need variations depending upon whatever the final design is.
So if you go a little bit further east at the entrance to, I guess is that Stonegate?
Correct.
Stonegate Road. You've got some tall poles that are column lights, and I remember
Yes, they're
discussion
existing.
ad nauseum about those, whether those are signs or light fixtures, what they were, and I'm sure you remember that. Can we find a way to include this corner and the development of this gateway and how wonderful this will be with this project, so that something, instead of having it just fenced in and weeds and overgrown grass and things like that, that gets done when the next building happens? Is there a way to have these go together? Or do we have to wait till more buildings happen?
Well, the signage is a different process, so I think.
Well, I'm aware of that.
So
So I'm asking, with the process of getting, when you come in, what's next? Is it the hotel? Is that the
Correct.
first thing?
Well, kind of everything at the same time, and we need signs quick too, so we would like to jump onto the signage right away. So, but I would say the hotels first, and then the residential and First Ascent work at the same time.
What about these 2 commercial buildings along Euclid? We approved something along there a year or so ago, right? Is that
Correct.
not happening?
Maybe a couple years ago, yeah. So, while we don't have any tenants identified, we are contemplating to perhaps go do a spec build on what is labeled Retail B, which is the corner of Stonegate and Euclid, to
Further east
encourage
one?
some activity, yeah. It's a risk, but in today's world, we feel that's a measured risk.
But you've got the climbing building that's approved and ready to go forward. You're going to come in with this hotel that hopefully is ready to go forward, and residential. Can we include that corner as part of the development? Get your designs put together, come here and get it approved, and so that we don't have to wait another 3 years to get that done.
We want to get that done. That's critical. Every retailer asks for the signage. So if it was possible, we'd come back in, but we'd work on some plans and come in right away. But we need to get, obviously we need to get this approved, but we're by no means trying to delay the signage.
What are you
That's
looking for
critical.
tonight?
For approval on the proposed amendment to the plan development.
But not any one specific to move forward yet. You just want to get the overall development approved and then you're still going to come back for
Yeah, for signage.
individual.
For individual build, exactly. But
If the PUD is approved, they have already submitted for permit for the hotel, So once the PUD is approved, they can then submit for their permits. There is a revision to the plat of subdivision, so the ADR2, that couldn't start until they file their final plat of subdivision, but the rest of it, they could start. First Descent could start tomorrow as soon as they submit a building permit. The Hotel Vibe and the outlot buildings and the parking lot, they could all submit for permit once this amendment is approved.
So the flaw here that I'm recognizing is we're not going to see this building again, the hotel building. The Design Commission will see it if they haven't already.
They have already seen it,
but
and
we as a
recommended
board are not
approval.
going to see any of these buildings come back.
That's correct.
That's correct. So what we do tonight allows them to proceed with any one of these projects based on the amended PUD.
Correct. And the Design Commission has reviewed on at least 2 occasions the residential ADR2 building and also the Arlington Vibe and the concept for the retail buildings.
But none of them are coming back here.
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess, and I guess that's fine. I would be an advocate for saying okay. I feel like we need that corner developed before shovel. We need that corner approved. Key phrase. The corner approved with whatever wants to be put there and whatever is going to be allowed there, and a combination of both to make it so that everyone's happy at this board level and all the other board levels before building permits are issued on some of this other stuff. That would be my position on this. I just don't want to see it sit there like it has for another 5 years, and I know you don't either. So my point is to give you the impetus to move on that.
And we're always, it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Retailers kind of drive what goes on that sign, all the uses back there that drive what we want to put on that sign. But I agree with you as far as the monument and having something. I mean, there's really 2 gateways in Arlington Heights from the major, from the expressways on Arlington Heights Road, and then here at Euclid. So we should do something that really is dramatic. We will begin in earnest on that. Okay. My word on that for sure.
And there is a requirement as part of one of the previously approved ordinances for the developer to prepare plans for a gateway sign, and get that approved as part of the development for the retail component. We would not necessarily want to, I agree with having something being developed, but we wouldn't necessarily want to hold up issuance of a permit on an element that's ready to go when that may take 12 or 14 months to build. But we just want to make sure they start that process.
Is there some reasonable caveat that we can propose? I agree with you. There's no reason to hold up something that's going to take a long time to do. But I just don't want to let that sit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that really is a pretty important aspect to this, as it was 7 or 8 years ago with your theme of this entire development. Now you have a new theme, and I would like to see this thing unified, and that piece on the corner is going to say an awful lot about what it is. So if we're going to be interesting about our signage, and if we're going to be cutting edge about the vibe of this place, that's where it all starts, if you ask me.
Could I just ask a technical question of Charles? As part of the Plan Commission application, we did elevate and indicate materiality for that sign, including illumination and the welcome to Arlington Heights. Mm-hmm. The single undefined portion of that is actually what constitutes the development signage for tenancy.
Right.
Would that go at least part way into affirming that it's our intent to proceed forward with that particular design element?
Well, I mean, it may change. There's been a number of different versions that we've seen here. So as the project moves forward, it may change. So we just need to see, detailed signage drawings as well as, the area itself, and some kind of time frame for submitting that, and then, proceeding through to get whatever approvals are necessary.
And I think there's only one message I want to send you, and I've taken up way too much time. We have a sign ordinance and a sign code, and there's signs all over this town, and there's monuments and all kinds of things that have happened for all ages and types of buildings. In my opinion, make this as heroic, there's that word again, as you originally proposed for your entire development. Throw caution to the wind and make this thing awesome.
Totally agree.
Okay? Don't let a small set of language in a code deter your ability to be creative on this thing and make it fantastic, because that's what it should be.
I totally agree. And you know what, that's going to bring in the best of class retailers as well. You know, that's the first thing they always ask.
It will. It sets the tone for everything.
I agree. And, we would intend, just practically speaking, within the next 6 months to submit some form, and maybe we can do it sooner, but
I would love to see it sooner than 6 months.
Because once we know our tenancy, once we have a little color and we're moving forward on this, the Vibe has their idea what they want, First Ascent has their idea what they want. This is an amalgamation that we'll get to the design table, get the right sign guys, and get something.
It's up to you to pull it all together.
Okay.
Because those are two strong individual perspectives, but somehow you've got to pull it all together.
Agree.
Okay, I'm done, sorry.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I'm glad to see that this is moving forward too, since I've followed the journey first on the Plan Commission and then now on this board. So I've seen the various iterations, just as Trustee Tinaglia has seen from the Design Commission and then Village Board perspective. As to the affordable housing units, it is a drop in the bucket. 9 units is a drop in the bucket of the need that's really available, or the need that's out there. But I do think, had we not had the discussion we had on the village board several weeks ago, we probably would be looking here at fee in lieu of for the entire building. We wouldn't even have these 9 units. So I am pleased and thankful that you as a developer and staff have been able to negotiate and at least come to this as something that will be in perpetuity.
We appreciate that. We're very much an advocate for affordable housing. It comes down to getting to a point where something can get financed and built. So the one thing I just want to plant the seed in everybody's mind is the sooner we get out of the ground and get going and get the rest of this stuff moving to where the baseline rents go higher, when we come back on ADR 3 and 4, we can take a bigger bite at the apple on the affordable quotient then, because the math will justify it. Right now, we have a building which is gorgeous, and I know many of you have been through one Arlington, but when it's all said and done after debt, we're pretty much cash flow neutral. So that doesn't help. So as we have these other amenities start going and we can start driving rents, then the whole everybody benefits, and we'll have a better opportunity to do more.
That's great. I'll be looking forward to that as it moves forward. But I'm glad that at least we've gotten to where we have today. So appreciate that. And for the senior building, you mentioned that it would be a little more upscale. Would that? I mean, that's another category.
Age restricted.
Well,
I'm going to be 55 next year. So
excuse me, age restricted. There's another population that also is in need of affordable housing, and whether that might be a component of this, or is that a different project? Different sort of.
That's a different operation. Honestly, it's different than. While it seems to be the same, you would think you got to get lumped together. There is a higher level, generally speaking, of amenity service. It's much more condominium-like and community-like in these age-restricted areas, so it's a different operating model. Having never developed one, I can't really speak to that, but I'm sure we will talk about it when they come up here, or whoever that is. That's likely not going to be us. That is that developer. I don't know that business.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, it's something we'll be looking forward to discussing further. Turning to the Vibe Hotel, I went to their website and looked at their information. You could download all the plans and all that sort of thing. And I think it's a really interesting concept and unique to the area, though, at least according to the website, there was one in Columbus, Ohio, and one in Turkey. So we're not talking about something that's, kind of inundated the market. So I think I like the idea of having something that's unique.
A little more boutique-y, and, which is neat. And, it really follows a bigger, actually, in this case, we're actually ahead of the curve. If you see it even in multifamily and rentals across urban areas where the trend is to be getting smaller, you hear about mini units, micro units, and then have a lot of outside amenity space and that sort of thing. This is very similar in the sense that it's not, the money isn't spent in the rooms, so to speak. It's spent in the common areas, and it's very much what I think people feel. They're not overpaying, but they get a lot big bang for their buck, and I think it's a good trend. It's got a big common area. We did enlarge some of the meeting space, and we went outside of their prototype because we feel there's a shortage of kind of group and meeting space in the area. We lost 60,000 feet of meeting space when the hotel went away. Mm-hmm. So there's a few things that were allowed us to tweak, but just just to get a sense of commitment, Best Western has committed $1.5 million of money into it. That's how much they believe in the product. So I think that's a big sign.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I did notice that when I looked at the floor plans, the rooms are a little smaller than what I normally encounter when I'm traveling. But I've also stayed in some European locations where they were awfully tiny. So I think it will be fine. But I like the idea that you're bringing a unique product here. So those are really my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Sidor.
I'll make this fast, Mayor. Just because the words first assent were uttered several times this evening, Randy, just reassure me that, or Charles, nothing that we're voting on this evening has anything to do with first assent, which has already been voted on, which I've recused myself from in the past, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So a couple quick items. Thank you for doing 9 units of affordable housing. We're trying to move the needle on this thing, and even though I appreciate Trustee Tinaglia's comments, when you look at the big tower, that was waived, and that was 7 years ago. But moving forward, this board has stated, we got to have some element of it. So thank you for the brick and mortar, and we'll take 9 units right now. And I'm going to hold you to the bigger bite in ADR 3 and 4.
Can't wait to get there.
I can't wait for you to get here, too. I'm glad to see you here with what looks like a reasonable and attainable plan. I know how hard you've tried. I mean, I don't think any developer wants to sit on a site for 7 years with one building and hopes and dreams of trying to build something fantastic, and it just doesn't come. I understand the market changes, so I'm hoping that this will do it for you. That's my second item. Thirdly, I know that Trustee Tinaglia is an architect, and he wants to spend your money. He wants you to put that sign up right away. With that said, I don't want to spend your money, but I'd love to see some of those temporary signs come down that are starting to look a little bit ratty on the fence. So if you can clean that up, that'd be great.
For sure.
I'm enforcing that. This is a complaint-based enforcement, Robin.
Got it.
So you're hearing the complaint from here. David, sorry.
Come down.
They don't look so great. And if we're trying to make this an elite and hip and cool and all those other words, and get a great vibe on that corner, maybe a little cleanup is
Sure.
due.
No
Fair
problem.
enough. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. Very quickly, I also want to thank you for adding some affordable housing. That as Trustee Sidor just said, we're starting to move the needle. I'm encouraged that we're talking more about this, and it seems to be actually happening. That's great. And I'm looking forward, as was stated earlier, about some additional units in the age-restricted area. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I do have one blue card on this item. Mr. Rob Horn. Mr. Horn.
Thank you. My name is Rob Horn. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development and Public Works at the City of Rolling Meadows. Prefer to have discussed this with the staff, but we provided comments on August 1st and only got a response on the 31st, so I have to bring this to your attention now. We provided about a dozen different items. We received an email, fairly informal, and just wanted to bring the 3 outstanding items that we still potentially have an issue with to the trustees. The first issue is we had offered to the developer If they provided a traffic study, that we would consider allowing them to defer the right-hand turn lane from southbound Rowling to westbound Euclid to a future phase. For some reason, they brought back that they wanted us to pursue the traffic study and for us to do land acquisition. We would hope that that would either be a requirement to the village of the developer or the village staff. The second issue is the setback requirement on, I believe it's the hotel, is as little as 15 feet from the right-of-way, and per your original or your earlier discussions, 15-foot setback is similar to like a residential side yard setback, not on a commercial frontage on a major highway. We would ask that a minimum of 30 feet, which is the City of Rolling Meadows requirement, be met, or further to match the setbacks along Euclid, which are more like 34 and 40 feet. And the last item we're fine with, is just for clarification, that we wanted, or the city had recommended, a distribution of street lighting along Rowling Road adjacent to the properties being developed. It's our understanding that there will only ever be one curb cut. I think it's Stonegate Drive, you said. As long as a street light is put there and no other curb cuts, we are fine with that issue. So again, respectfully would have handled that with your staff, but just receiving the information on Friday, we had to come here. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Staff response to that?
Yes, so the developer has had discussions with Rolling Meadows. Page 6 of our staff report outlines the prior conditions that talk about the off-site roadway improvements and what's required in coordination, both between the village and Rolling Meadows. So the southbound turn lane is still one of the requirements that the developer has to work towards. The exact logistics of how that happens and whether additional right-of-way is necessary, we'll have to have discussions with Rolling Meadows on that. With respect to the setbacks, the property is zoned B2. Our current B2 zoning district has a 0 setback requirement. However, the overlay zone for this area has a 15-foot setback, so for structures and parking, and they are meeting that. We've tried to cluster the buildings around the perimeter, have that internal courtyard, still have it be nicely landscaped. So from our point of view, we're comfortable with the setbacks as proposed. And then with respect to the comment on the street light, originally there were 2 or 3 additional curb cuts, and there would have been additional lighting required, and currently there is only the one existing exit onto Rolling Road. So we'll work with the developer to ensure that that's acceptably illuminated for the safety of drivers.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Charles, there was a driveway behind the retail buildings. Is that something that could be used for deliveries? You indicated, I think, in one of the diagrams. Or
yes, I think this button probably shows it a little easier. So yeah, there's a driveway that circulates around. So there could be the potential right here.
Behind, behind Building A, I think there was a driveway behind there that faced Euclid, right?
That's in anticipation of one of these potential tenant being a drive-through. We don't know who the users are yet. So they would need special use for approval of that. But yes, there's potential for loading from those drive-throughs as well, depending upon hours of operation and things like that.
So David, while you're there, do you have any feel for what kind of tenants you're looking for? Are they restaurant, fast food? I mean, sit-down restaurant, fast food?
I think the site, the history of the site has a propensity for entertainment, and just given its proximity to the racetrack. In today's world, you know, it's not, we envision, you know, craft breweries, quick service food. You know, when I don't foresee fine dining per se, but I do see a lot of different restaurant offerings.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from the board? All right, just with respect to the items just brought up by the city of Rolling Meadows, I'm comfortable with this 15-foot setback. The items 1 and 3, I understand that if we approve what's before us tonight, there will still be some discussions between the staff and the developer in Rolling Meadows that can work some of these issues out. Is that right?
Yes, there's a whole slew of off-site conditions, some of which Rolling Meadows has applied for a grant for bike grant and pedestrian connections, and the village is participating in that grant with some funding. So a lot of those are getting taken care of with that. But yes, there are conditions relative to southbound turn lane on Rolling Road, eastbound turn lane on Euclid, potential traffic signal if warranted at Euclid and the main driveway. So there are a number of conditions that still have to be, you know, implemented, you know, as the project moves forward.
Okay. I just don't want to get in trouble with my friend Mayor Prana over there. So you can tell him that we heard your concerns and that we're sensitive to them, and hopefully some of the things that are at least negotiable are still negotiable after tonight. So thank you, Mr. Horn, for coming tonight. Just in terms of my 2 cents, I would echo the comments from Trustee Tinaglia in terms of what we originally envisioned here and had expectations for here, and I think it can still become something that we envisioned in terms of the exciting potential for this corner as a major gateway to the village of Arlington Heights. So as Trustee Tinaglia indicated, a big component of that is quality. And so I know that you will follow through with respect to the design of some of the retail buildings, which look a little warehousey to me. And so just in terms of making it as exciting and creative as possible. And so I would appreciate your continued involvement with that process as we move forward from tonight.
We'll push that.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. We have no motion or a second. What's the will of the board?
I will make a motion to accept the Plan Commission recommendation with the changes to number 5, the affordable housing units permitted. Does that make it?
Sound good, Ms. Ward?
Is that a good?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Trustee LaBedz, seconded by Trustee Tinaglia. Further questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, congratulations, and
thank you very much.
Let's try to get this done.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your persistence.
All right, we have no other new business, so we'd move on to the report of the village manager. Anything other than the request for closed session?
No.
Anything from the board under petitions and communication? Seeing none, back to Mr. Recklaus.
Okay, I'm having a little bit of an issue here. We would request a closed session for 5 ILCS 120/2C21, discussion of minutes lawfully closed, whether for the purpose of approval of minutes or the semi-annual review of the minutes, in 5 ILCS 120/2C, which is pending litigation.
Can we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
By Trustee Rosenberg, second by Trustee Sidor. Any questions or comments? None. Roll call.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Sidor?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
President Hayes?
Yes. So we are adjourned into closed session and will not be reporting out. Thank you for joining us tonight.